Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Johnny Torch Live, our number 42nd edition of the live show. Been going on since April. We're closing in on a year pretty soon, huh? The recorded shows that I used to do, we did them recorded for quite a while, but again, I worked ceaselessly about a week before Christmas to do a Christmas video. And even using my old laptop, I can't make it happen. For some reason, the audio's cutting out. It was very disheartening. And I believe the audio still cuts out from time to time when I'm doing live broadcasts, but bear with me, please. Maybe I'll work on that Christmas project again for next year. Bad that I didn't get it out for you in time for Christmas. Blame the laptop, blame the cheap laptop, the new one I got, blame the old laptop for falling apart. But whatever you do, don't blame me for my intentions. All right, let's get right to it. We are having a grand time here, the final week of 2017. How was 2017 to you? Let's back up for a minute. How was your Christmas? Let me be the last to wish you a very Merry Christmas. I hope everybody enjoyed their Christmas. I hope everyone had a happy holiday. And I had a great time. We just had a great time with the family, kicking back mostly, and just taking it nice and slow. And, the great Christmas specials. I'm trying to catch up on some of them still now, even after Christmas. But uh, just having a great time. And, we're going to get to it a little later tonight. We're going to look back at 2017 in movies, the year in movies. We'll look at that and see how that goes. First up, we have actually a Torch News roundup, but there's only one subject, but I didn't really want to devote this to just the video. I wanted to devote this as the Torch News roundup because we're going to talk more about The Last Jedi. First, we're going to start off with This Week in Comic Book Television. We usually save that for the end, but we've only got one show to review. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the only thing that's still on. Um, I'm going to. I didn't do a Johnny's NFL football picks of the week this past week. Was too busy. I will give you an update on my scores for last week, not this week, but last week. I got a score of 13-3, not bad. So my average goes up to 157 wins and 83 losses for the season. If any of you are interested, which, I don't know why you would be. Maybe this is a feature that won't come back next season. I don't know. But I haven't looked at the schedule yet for this week's picks. We'll do that. I don't know if this is going to be the last episode. I build this as the last episode of the year. I can't make any promises. I won't be busy on Saturday, but if it's at all possible, maybe I'll do a special show on Saturday and see what we can come up with. If any news breaks, it's a very slow news week. That's why, like I said, we've only got the one episode, the one topic in the Torch News Roundup, and the one episode in This Week in Comic Book Television. First off, I wanted to bring your attention to my poll of the week. Now, I got this poll out while I wasn't doing a video, so I haven't had time to really publicize this on YouTube. This video, this poll that I'm doing. But as of now, you still have 20 hours left to vote in it, so hopefully you watch this video pretty early on. And my question was, and this goes to what we were talking about with Star Wars The Last Jedi. Jedi review, I theorized that Mark Hamill would have written a better Episode 8 than Rian Johnson, giving his understanding of the character of Luke Skywalker. The question is, would you prefer to see a Star Wars sequel or film trilogy directed by Mark Hamill? 36 votes cast, not the biggest, tally that I've gotten for my polls, but a decent showing. And so far, 47% say The Last Jedi was fine as is, and 53% say Mark should have directed The Last Jedi. It started quite the opposite. It started with a lot of Last Jedi supporters taking the lead, and then Mark should have back and is starting to win now by a smaller margin, admittedly. Fans are torn on this. Again, let's get to that a little bit later, but I just wanted to direct anybody who's watching the beginning of the show, head on over to my Twitter poll now. My link is in the description page, and you will find the poll up still for the next 20 hours at least. So head on over there and vote if you haven't already. All right, now let's get to this week in comic book television. And right off the bat, we're going to start with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes, this is the week, this is the episode where we get the backstory of Fitz and how he came to the space future, whatever this is. And also reintroduce Hunter. Hunter returns to help Fitz escape from prison. All right, let's start from the beginning, though. This episode picks up at the beginning of the season where the team is having dinner or whatever in the diner. And for whatever reason, while the whole team gets taken, Fitz is left. So he gets arrested by the military, some black ops organization. I don't really remember the name of the place. I don't think it was Sword or anything like that, or at least it hasn't been identified as such yet. The military then agreed to let him work on finding the team from prison because for some reason, even though they apparently were abducted by aliens, of course they don't know that yet at this point. So in about 6 months' time, he can't figure anything out. Fitz can't, and Hunter finally arrives to help him break out of prison. Fitz sended coded messages to Hunter in soccer mags. That was pretty funny. And I generally just liked seeing them get together. I really didn't know they were such great mates. I forgot, I guess, in the past 2 seasons where they haven't been on the show. Of course, obviously, the intention was they were going to be called Marvel's Most Wanted. They were going to spin them off into their own show, Hunter and Bobby, which we find out that Hunter and Bobby are still together, but not really together, so to speak. They're not together physically, but they're together relationship wise, which I thought was good. I mean, they could have just acted like, well, because they couldn't get Adrian Palacki on the show. I wonder if I'm saying her name right. I never knew if I was saying her name right, even when she was on this show. I always call her Adrian Palacki. I don't know if that's correct. Am I saying her name correctly? I don't know. I've never met the girl. But she's on the Orville now, which I still haven't seen, by the way. I've been kind of curious, seeing as how it gets a lot of, decent reviews from people that like that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I didn't even get a chance to catch up on MacGyver the past couple of weeks. I think it's been like 2 or 3 weeks of MacGyvers that I haven't seen. Completely behind on Riverdale. I only seen the first episode of the season, and that's probably not going to change. I don't think I'm going to have a chance to get caught up with um, Riverdale because of so much stuff that's going to be coming back in January. We still have Black Lightning to debut soon. But I digress. Let's get back to the show. Anyhow, so Fitz and Bobby are still together. Fitz and Hunter confront the Kree that's responsible for the abduction, and he's named Enoch, which is a clever thing. If you are not really too familiar with your Bible, I suggest you pick it up. It doesn't just get read by sitting there. But Enoch was one of the earliest descendants of Adam, and he is only one of a few people to ascend to heaven without dying. Um, I believe who else? It was Elijah. Yeah, I think that there's only two, right? Yeah, it's only Enoch and Elijah that ascended without dying. I think Moses died and was buried, I believe, and Jesus died and was resurrected and ascended. But so I'm pretty sure, yeah, they're the only two. But anyhow, so I don't know if what they're trying to say with that is another one of those type of Star Trek things where they're trying to say, oh, maybe that's Enoch from the Bible. I don't know. Not to think that, of course, as a Christian man. But I just pointed out because it's interesting and it might have gone over a bunch of people's heads. Uh, anyhow, so Enoch tells them about a Kree seer uh, for the Kree. I don't know, which turns out to be the kid that can see the future from 2 seasons ago. Robin is her name, and her father could see the future, and Daisy saved him. And you remember all that, right? I don't have to go into all that. You remember that. I didn't really like that season, but that was a pretty decent ending where they had, a prophecy that somebody was going to die, and of course it turned out to be Lincoln. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen season 3 of Agents of Shield. Um, so they evade the army and they all hide out. Now the Kree guy tells them to use his ship, so they break into the military base to get it. So they use like cryo freeze technology to freeze Fitz, have that ship orbit, I guess, the Earth, and hope that nothing's going to disturb it for the next 74 years until he wakes up to join Coulson and team in the future. Hunter and Bobby are supposed to look after Robin and her mom, and Enoch is just going to hang around, I guess, and look after Fitz while he's sleeping. I don't know. Funny send off by Hunter when he does the whole Empire Strikes Back thing. I love you, and Fitz says, "I know." That was great. I thought that was funny. So Fitz wakes up in the future with Enoch to greet him, and he puts on the mask and the disguise, and hence that's where we came in with the team in the previous episode. Um, Again, really good episode. Loved seeing Hunter back. I wish they could get him back full time. Of course, they probably can. I don't think the actor Nick Blood, isn't that a great name? Nick Blood sounds like a pirate or something. Hey, Nick Blood. But I don't think he's working on anything. It's Adrian Palaki, if that is her name. That's being busy at the time. So I don't know if they'll ever get them two back together. It's nice to see Hunter back on his own. I guess if they can't get Adrian back, then or Adrienne, maybe they should make an effort to get Nick Blood back. I don't know. This one 4 stars out of 5. That's 4 stars out of 5 for this week in Agents of Shield and this week in comic book television. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of what they did 2 seasons ago when they had um, Gemma on the other island with the hunky astronaut. And I think this story turned out better than that whole Leviathan type critter thing, whatever it was. That just, I don't know. They were trying to do something like that, like Leviathan, I think, but it just didn't work out really that great. But this year was pretty cool. You still have the same themes of are they cursed? Does the universe not want Fitzsimmons to be a thing? Um, that's what I said. Again, I think I always bring this up. I did a video that was, you can still find it, of course, in the Soapbox Rants about how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has done the romantic plot so much better than Arrow. And, of course, the video was called Arrow Is It Really As Bad As All That? Which I never really thought it was too bad, but seeing how they could improve would be to take a page out of Fitzsimmons' relationship because they have events conspire to keep them apart. It's not this angsty drama where, you know, deprived reason for Felicity to be on the outs with him, with Oliver. And in this case, it's always more of something that they're trying to get together, but something always keeps them apart. And they kind of play up that idea of, oh, this is some kind of cruel fate. I don't mind that so much because it's a very, romantic literature type approach. But, I don't think writers have that kind of soul, so to speak. They don't have that kind of depth to come up with something like that. They come up with things less romantic poetry and more angsty soap opera. That's their forte. Anyway, let's not get into a rant there, but I already did the rant about that, but it still holds true. All right, so there we have it this week in comic book television, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Good episode. And I believe the show is coming back not this week, but next week. So they will be back before the rest of the CW shows. And of course, if you love the CW shows like I do, for good and bad, warts and all, and if you love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Gotham, come on and tune in. We've got a lot of fun here talking about these episodes, and I just talk about them alone. I got the chat room open if you want to talk about the episodes. let me know, and we can have some fun talking about television. All right, now to our next subject, and we're going to tackle the Last Jedi backlash. And as I'm sure you're aware, it's been going on since the movie came out because the movie is, of course, very divisive. A lot of fans, those would be the correct term. I think some people are just defending it because they just love Star Wars. People are going to look back at this movie and say, yeah, it really wasn't what we wanted. This wasn't the greatest thing since sliced bread, the way they're doing now with The Force Awakens. And of course, a lot of people out there outright hate it and despise the movie. All my YouTube peers pretty much have jumped on the hate bandwagon. I don't think of too many people who's actually in love with this movie. Um, John Campia and maybe some of the Collider people. I haven't watched Collider in I don't know how long, but I saw a little bit of Campia's review. Obviously, he liked it. Um, so it's very difficult to, gauge how this film is gonna be looked at in history, historically, because I think the opinion of the prequels softened over time when people realized they were getting piled on with hate, and a lot of people just were piling on for the sake of it. Because I've said that all along. Again, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but you have to understand the of the typical internet. Basically, what happens is the first wave of people that see a movie say, "Oh, it's great. It's the greatest movie out of all the movies in the series. It's going to be a classic that'll be going down in history, and it's never gonna be topped." That basically is true for, I think, every movie in a franchise, whatever. Then what'll happen is you'll get the opposition, so to speak. Then we'll have people that'll say, "This movie was terrible. Look at all the plot holes. Look at all the plot holes. You can't explain to me how this makes sense." I'm not trying to sound like Eric from Geek Evolution, I promise. But you know, then what'll happen is there'll be bandwagon jumping. Then you'll have people jumping on the bandwagon saying, "Oh, gee, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy that hates a bad movie. I want to be one of the cool kids. Yeah, I want to say this movie was terrible. I want to say this movie was awful. Oh, it's so bad." And that kind of is what happens. And that's what happened to the prequels. That's what kind of happened to Spider-Man 3. I still insist that's a great movie, Spider-Man 3. And that's what you call like the bandwagon jumping effect happening here. This seems to be sort of like what's happening is a large segment of people sort of understood right off the bat what we were getting was not quite what everybody wanted. Now we'll get into what I'm saying here about Mark Hamill. Now, first off, we had this video, and I've got the image taken from it, of Mark Hamill at the premiere. And him coming out of that theater, he looks shell shocked. He looks devastated. And quite frankly, that's the way most of us felt. This was not something that became a bandwagon jumping event. This was something that we came out of it kind of shell shocked, kind of like, Is that what we waited for?" Because I know I waited 34 years to see Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker back on the big screen, and I didn't get Luke Skywalker. And I said in my review, I said multiple times before I even heard any of Mark Hamill's words, which we'll get to in a moment. I said I feel so bad for Mark Hamill because I know he said all along basically that this is not really the way he saw Luke Skywalker, but this video of him is devastating. I was watching Tyrone Magnus, and he was about this. I can't laugh at this. This breaks my heart. I mean, Mark Hamill has been a great guy all around. I don't necessarily agree with his political opinions, but everybody's entitled to their opinions and beliefs. I don't hold any of that against anybody. But he's been genuinely a good guy when it comes to fandom. And you can tell he appreciates Gates time, because I think that happens to all the actors when as soon as they're done with a project, it's like, "Look, I can do more than that. I'm not just Luke Skywalker." The famous "I am not Spock," when, you get tired of people coming up to you and saying, "Hey, Mr. Spock, yeah, let me see your ears." And then you're like, I just wanna get, dinner or something at the grocery store. I don't wanna have to deal with this no more." But, Mark Hamill came to terms with that, as Leonard Nimoy and as many of these, actors have that are known for an iconic role like this. And he was a great torchbearer for Star Wars, for Luke Skywalker. And he never shied away from telling the truth. And that's the thing that I think I admire the most about basically all three. Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher, who we're today on the anniversary for passing. But Mark Hamill had the guts to say right off the bat what he felt. Carrie Fisher was always, very forthcoming on how she felt. That's a given. Harrison Ford basically out and out said he did The Force Awakens for the money. I mean, he agreed to do it because they would kill off the character too, but he made no bones about the fact that it wasn't really a sentimental issue for him. He came back to the character, did what he wanted to with the character, collected a paycheck, and he was done. Mark Hamill, I think, had slightly more, let's say, sentimental reasons for coming back. I don't think he just came back for the paycheck. Now because he knew that this was the role for which he had touched a lot of lives. He touched all of us as children in our hearts as the character of Luke Skywalker. I even said on Twitter about a day ago where I said, this is my childhood hero, and by the middle of the movie, where he's refusing the lightsaber from Rey for the 47th time, I just grew to dislike him, something I thought I would never feel for Luke Skywalker. Why was Ryan Johnson wanting to make me dislike my childhood hero? And it comes down to, you know, when you have writers and directors that think they know better for the character, they want to subvert expectations. They want to show that the character you thought you knew been on. And I compared this to Zack Snyder with Superman. He's doing his version of Superman. It's a mopey, dour version of Superman that nobody really wants to see and nobody cares for. And in this case, it's almost the same thing here, where this is the deconstructed Luke Skywalker and the deconstructed Jedi and the Force. That's not what we want. That is what is killing the genre, both Star Wars and DC. Although DC brothers had Joss Whedon step in and inject some adrenaline into Justice League and pretty much saved it from Snyder. So getting back here to this, Mark Hamill knew that this is not the correct depiction of Luke Skywalker. Mark Hamill knew that he wasn't really playing the Luke Skywalker fans wanted to see, or that he himself wanted to see, because, as I said, he has respect for this character. Is all about. That's what led me to put up the poll saying, would you like to see Mark Hamill direct a Star Wars film starring Luke Skywalker? Because he knows what the fans want. He knows how Luke Skywalker would act, and he's not going to just change it willy-nilly for the sake of it. All right, so let's get to what he said over the course of several interviews during the press tour for The Last Jedi. Mark Hamill was quoted as saying, I said to Ryan, I said, Jedis don't give up. I mean, even if he had a problem, he would maybe take a year to try and regroup. But if he made a mistake, he would try and right that wrong. So right there, we had a fundamental difference anymore. It's somebody else's story, and Ryan needed me to be a certain way to make the ending effective. Problem. Luke would never say that. I'm sorry. He means, end quote for a minute, he means the Jedi must end. Because when you think of it, it doesn't match up with Luke Skywalker at all. Luke Skywalker was the most determined of all to be a Jedi. when you go through the whole progression of his arc during the original trilogy, he dedicated himself to being a Jedi. He had faith in being a Jedi. They took that faith away from Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker, of all people, lost faith. And that's in A New Hope. He had faith. You don't believe in the Force, do you? He was talking to a skeptic. He was talking to Han Solo, who was the skeptic. And he even brought Han Solo around by the end of that film. Jedi, and he probably didn't understand the mythical qualities of the Force, but he brought some kind of faith to Han Solo, the skeptic, just how in tune Luke was with the Force, that Luke was serious about it. Then we come to The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back, this is the other aspect that they got wrong of Luke Skywalker, where Luke Skywalker in his hands. He's not going to, in the case of The Empire Strikes Back, see the bigger picture, because the bigger picture was train, save the galaxy, destroy the Emperor, and defeat Vader, and all of that. He was going to save his friends first. In The Last Jedi, he's sitting on his duff for, how many years? Potentially 20 years? Um, maybe 15 years. I don't know how old Kylo Ren was supposed to be before he became whatever he became, but the fact remains, Luke was completely throwing in the towel. You don't see that. Then we get to Return of the Jedi, and his story arc there is he is not going to give up the Jedi. He's not going to fight Vader. He's not going to give in to the dark side. And I don't know how they can reconcile this Last Jedi version of Luke with what we see in Return of the Jedi. He's willing to throw away his lightsaber and confront the Emperor, and his faith in the Jedi is such that he believes that Vader can be redeemed. His faith in the Force is such that he believes Vader can be redeemed. He says, "I'm a Jedi like my father before me." He's a Jedi at that point. If you want to know when did Luke Skywalker become a Jedi, there was no ceremony, there was no, parade for him or anything. When he said, "I'm a Jedi like my father before me," and he threw his lightsaber away when Luke Skywalker was a Jedi. When did he give this up? Now, looking back, and we'll get back to Mark Hamill's quotes for a minute in a moment. But this takes us back to another thing that I haven't really delved into too much yet. But the concept that he was going to kill Kylo Ren, uh, that doesn't jibe well with the Luke of Return of the Jedi. Luke basically had to be dragged to the dark side in order to, disarm, so to speak, Darth Vader. He had so much faith that Vader would turn good. We had to see from Luke's perspective what he saw in Kylo Ren that would make him attempt to assassinate him in his sleep. Now, I said in my review, and I think it still stands, that I can see maybe Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker doing this from the original trilogy, lighting up the lightsaber when he sensed in Kylo Ren. But what the problem was they didn't show us what Luke saw. What they needed to show us was Luke saw that Kylo in the future would eventually kill Han Solo. We needed to see that flashback of him putting the saber through Han Solo's chest. Then I can believe that Luke would instinctively light up his lightsaber and say, "Oh, by heavens, can I prevent this? Am I going to let Han die?" And then he thinks better of it and says, "No, I can't take this vision as something that I have to act on in the moment." And he shuts it off. And then you could play the scene where Kylo sees him with the lightsaber over him and takes that as you know, his excuse to enter the dark side and give himself over to the dark side. But we didn't get that in the film. Why didn't we get that? Because what would need to happen then was Luke would have to go and save Han Solo, or at least attempt to save Han Solo, and they already crossed that bridge when they couldn't find something for Luke Skywalker to do in a Star Wars movie, something that I never thought I'd say. You can't find something for Luke Skywalker to do in The Force Awakens? Mark Hamill had the best idea of all. He senses in the Force Han Solo's in danger. He comes to his aid. He's too late. The same way he was too late in The Empire Strikes Back. Just because you sense something doesn't mean it's going to. And Han Solo still dies the way he dies, the same way as Han Solo was frozen and taken away by Boba Fett before Luke even got to Cloud City. It was an easy way to play that, but they didn't have any imagination about them to do anything like that. They just wanted to pander to the new characters and give them extra screen time. All right. Going back to Mark Hamill's comments. Well, in this version, see, I'm talking about the George Lucas Star Wars. Sidebar again. The George Lucas Star Wars. That is the true Star Wars. This is not the true Star Wars. This is not being seen through the prism of what George Lucas originally created. Now, people want to bash the prequels till they're blue in the face. You don't have to like the prequels. I've said it all along. I've got a very popular video where I said, in defense of George Lucas and the Star Wars prequels. You should check that out if you haven't already. But the prequels were Star Wars. They felt very Star Wars. They were consistent with the original trilogy. And you can't tell me otherwise. I mean, there was a few things that they had to add to sort of, elongate the story a little bit, give a little more understanding for things. People weren't expecting, we never got fully into all the different aspects of the midichlorians and the Jedi when they die and so forth. But you could tell that it was well thought out from beginning to end. These films are not well thought out at all. George Lucas masterminded the original trilogy and the prequels, and it shows. Now, that's not to say he didn't change his mind on a few things, didn't amend a few things, but it shows that there was some forethought involved. There was no forethought involved here. Mark Hamill's comments. This is the next generation of Star Wars, so I almost had to think of Luke as another character. Maybe he's Jake Skywalker. He's not my Luke Skywalker, but I had to do what Ryan wanted me to do because it serves the story well. But listen, I still haven't accepted it completely. I hope people like it. I hope they don't get upset. And I came to really believe that Ryan was the exact man that they needed for this job. So basically, at the very end, he's starting to heap praise on Ryan Johnson, even though he's saying, well, you're basically taking the character of Luke Skywalker down a rat hole and completely reinventing him to be a character that is not my Luke Skywalker. And it's basically what he's saying. It's the truth. That's not Luke Skywalker. That's not my Luke Skywalker. That's not Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker. That's not George Lucas like Luke Skywalker. And ironically, George Lucas has been quiet about his thoughts on these films, and basically he just said, from what I understand, all he said about The Last Jedi was that it was beautifully shot, which I think we all agree, film by any means. But the the aggravation really that comes from this film is that we all waited to see Luke Skywalker, everybody's favorite Jedi, the Jedi Master element. We waited all this time to see the Jedi Master version of Luke Skywalker, and he's sitting on an island. He's milking some kind of retarded alien goat or whatever that was. And the nail not to get involved. And when he does get involved, he does some kind of Doctor Strange force projection and does the Ali shuffle for like 10 minutes. And then he dies. He just dies, it doesn't resonate with what we knew about Luke. And like I said, the shock and horror that's written on Mark Hamill's face right there is pretty much what the collective fandom has been feeling ever since seeing the film. It's the first film in Star Wars saga that I didn't really even feel like seeing again. I don't know if I will or not. I only saw Thor Ragnarok once this year, and I kind of would rather try to find a theater still playing that right now. All right, now this is to close on the subject. We need to go back to what Mark Hamill said today. I believe it came out today. His sort of dialing back criticisms he made about The Last Jedi. And he was quoted as saying on Twitter, I regret voicing my doubts and insecurities in public. Creative differences are a common element of any project, but usually remain private. A good movie. I got more than that. Ryan Johnson made an all-time great one. Now, again, a lot of people are speculating, is this something that Disney made him do? Is this something that he had to clarify because, the movie is not doing too well with audiences? It's doing all right financially, and I could break out the numbers, and everybody's done that. And that's not really my thing. I don't think numbers really mean anything. I mean, the Transformers movies make billions, and what does that mean? Does that really mean anything? So, ironically, even with it making a lot of money, it's not making the money that they were hoping for. It's basically another Justice League where word of mouth has pretty much hurt it to the point where it's not doing what they wanted it to do. There's been some speculation that Disney already knows Han Solo, the Solo movie, is in trouble. I don't know how much of that is true. I believe it's true because it's the same thing as Justice League, and I told you about Justice League before. Warner Brothers wasn't surprised when Justice League, quote unquote, underperformed. Hybrid there between Zack Snyder's mopey version to the inserts of the happy, peppy, joyful stuff with Joss Whedon injected into it. They knew they were dealing with something a little off. And with basically Howard making Solo on the fly, picking up where Lord and Miller left off, it's going to be another one of those hybrid things where you're going to feel like it was created in the shop. You know what I mean? It was not well thought out in advance. So it's the same thing here. And there was also another video, another interview Mark Hamill did. We also added being pushed out of your comfort zone is a good thing. Because if I was just another benevolent Jedi training young Padawans, we've seen it. And nobody can do it better than Alec Guinness. And I shouldn't even try. Now, that's just him trying to be cordial and try to put a nice spin on you know the sad truth. Um, Seeing him train Jedi is pretty much what was the hook in Return of the Jedi. That was what was going to happen. He was going to train Jedi, and we were going to see the birth of a new Jedi Order. More Jedi. There's just going to be Rey, and we're going to have to hope that Rey will follow through on Yoda's advice that he gave to Luke, that Luke didn't really follow through on, and create a new Jedi Order. It's just cutting Luke out of the story entirely. It's taking the heart and soul of the story, the most important character of the story, and basically reducing him to being ineffective and unnecessary. And it's very sad. Like I said before, the framework is all there to do a good sequel trilogy. They could keep Daisy Ridley and John Boyega and Oscar Isaac and Adam Driver. They're all fine. That's not what the problem is with the films. The problem is they don't know how to write the original characters. Regressed Han Solo back to being a smuggler because they didn't know how else to write a mature Han Solo. They make Luke a grumpy old man that's disenfranchised with life. That's not the way Luke Skywalker was ever portrayed. He could never act like that, but that's what they made him. Uh, they basically just tried to appease feminists with Princess Leia by making her General Leia, and she's still in charge and everything. And when she's not in charge, there's another woman in charge, and so that's the same thing. They don't even extend Billy D. Williams an invitation. Poor Billy D. He's not even being invited to this. He's being an afterthought. And in the third movie here, will they finally give him some kind of walk-on role? On R2, they've done nothing with them, which is pretty sad. They were the heart and soul of the comedy of the original trilogy, and they haven't even shared a scene really together. And Chewie lined him for most of this. You think he'd be side by side with Leia probably through the movies? That's what I would think because the Empire Strikes Back when he says the princess, you have to take care of her. You would think that would sort of be like Chewie's next mission, the way he was. indebted to Han Solo, he'd be indebted to Princess Leia. Again, there were so many things that the average run-of-the-mill fan could have written better about these films, and that's why you're getting the backlash. It's not because people are bandwagon jumping this time. It's not because there's some kind of resentment that they want these films to do bad. Everybody wanted to see a good Star Wars sequel with Luke Skywalker. We really didn't get it, and it's disappointing people a lot now, and that's the reason why you're having this kind of reaction. And I think Mark Hamill, to his credit, is just trying to quell the flames of the furor, because people are pointing to him now because he said it so many times, and he's a high-ranking person in this film to opinions. And I'm sure Disney don't like that. The studio don't like that. And I'm sure Ryan Johnson doesn't like that, because people are starting to say now, why should we give this guy a trilogy? We're already had announced that he's getting a trilogy, Ryan Johnson, to do 3 movies of heaven only knows what. I mean, it's supposed to not be from the Skywalkers or anything else. You're gonna direct that we want to see now after seeing this? I don't know. I just don't know. All right, so again, let me know what you think here. What do you think about Mark Hamill's comments? Is he right all along that basically we're disappointed that it's not the Luke Skywalker we wanted to see? Is there something to him saying that we should be pushed out of our comfort zone and it shouldn't just be the simplest explanation, which is what we were expecting from Return of the Jedi, that Luke was going to be another Obi-Wan and he was going to be uplifting and he was going to. No, it's just, I can't even say it. It's not even true. You can't think that. It just doesn't make any sense. Luke was never portrayed as this defeatist character that we had in The Last Jedi. If you say so, you're wrong. I mean, you can enjoy the movie. I have nothing against people enjoying the movie. And I'll probably get it on Blu-ray and I'll probably watch it again and try to, enjoy it for what it is. But you can't tell me this is the Luke Skywalker of the original trilogy. Even Han Solo was the Han Solo of the original trilogy in his regressed form as a smuggler. And Princess Leia, for the most part, is still in keeping with her character. I don't think it was her greatest performance in The Last Jedi, sure. But still, everything else worked pretty well besides, and it's a sin. It's a sin. It's a real sin. It's a shame, and we all, I think, share Mark Hamill's pain, as we see in this picture. And it breaks my heart. This is what he's known for. He wanted to go out on a high note and leave a legacy behind of Star Wars that he could be proud of. And I think he just knows right now that that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. And it's very sad. All right, let's move on now. We're going to have to wrap things up pretty soon. We've got a good 20 minutes left in the show. Let's see. We have the top 7 movies that I've seen this year, and I'm going to rank them in order. And you let me know what you think about these films and what your list is in the comments below. Okay. And of course, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to be real. I'm not going to make a list that anybody else is going to agree with, because my opinions are my own and I am not going to change them for anyone. Conventional list for you. So be it. But this is the way it goes. Number 7, coming in at number 7 on my list. Coming in last, basically, of the movies I've seen this year that were released this year. We're going to have. And I did a review for this one not too long ago because I did see this one at home. I didn't see this one in theaters. A lot of people are praising this one as one of the great, comic book films of all time. Frankly, I don't see it. Uh, it was passable entertainment. I mean, I wouldn't say I didn't look at my watch during the movie. I didn't, throw up my hands in frustration, but it certainly didn't hit the spot for me. I mean, again, there's this trend. We're talking about The Last Jedi. There's this trend to make these films darker and more dour, and it's like a hopeless case that the hero's up against. And basically, instead of rising above the challenge, he ends up the challenge, basically. It's the same thing here. This is the one battle Logan can't walk away from after all those years. Um, again, I didn't really like the swearing and the excessive violence, although the excessive violence probably wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. A lot of the film I felt was, regressive. I went through this already in my review a couple of weeks ago, so I won't completely recap the review here. But again, Hugh Jackman is fantastic. Would love to see him come back on song. He's going to go out this way. Patrick Stewart as well. Great performance. The actors were pretty good. I mean, I just didn't like the story that much. The Weapon 23 thing, X-23, she was good, the kid actor. I don't know. It didn't really feel all that entertaining to me, her story. I mean, I don't know, some them trying to get the kids over to Mexico and then something goes wrong and the kids are by themselves now going to Mexico. I don't know. I don't know, the story kind of felt off to me. The bad guy was cool, the guy with the robot arm, he was all right. Um, Again, it just felt like something I already seen before, and it was just more dour and more dark and mopey than I would have cared to see. Again, with another protagonist that's kind of, throwing in the towel. He just wants to go off and retire, and they're trying to do, like, I think, that old thing where he wants to go off and retire at the ranch, but they keep pulling him in, and so I could kind of see some of that there was inspired, but again, just I didn't enjoy it that much. So Logan comes in at number 7 for me on my top 7 films I saw this year, 2017. All right, next up, this one here, and number 6 we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Yeah, this one was underwhelming for me. And I say that as someone who wasn't a huge fan of Guardians in the first place. I thought the first movie was good. I thought the first movie was entertaining. I didn't have it at the top of my list like a lot of people do. Because I really didn't, I don't know, I didn't take to all the characters all that well. I mean, I thought Peter Quill was really funny, and that most of the characters were funny. Drax and Rocket were funny, and Groot was good. I don't know. It just it didn't seem to really, I don't know, impress me as a superhero movie. I don't know, it just felt like, you know, I don't know, it was just a little off. I don't know. So, it's like a middle of the road movie for me, I guess. I had it really low on my list. I think, like I said, I'm gonna do a ranking of these, and I think the first one's gonna go up a little bit higher. But Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is still my least favorite of thus far. It didn't really reach any of the highs of the first movie. It wasn't as funny. I didn't think as many of the jokes worked this time. Um, Most of the jokes worked in the first one. Not many of them really I can think of that worked this one. It was kind of funny. I remember seeing a Rocket doing the stuff with the good, and Drax had some good one-liners against Mantis or whatever. But apart from that, I don't know. The Baby Groot ended up being a letdown because I liked the first scene with him where he's dancing. And the rest of the movie after that was pretty dull, dark, and uninspired. We got a little more of Nebula, which I liked because I thought that she had more of a story that needed to be answered in the first film, but they saved it for this film. So her part, um, d- I don't know. The music was all right. Probably not as good as the first movie, I think. Although Flashlight was probably, a standout. That was in the credits. ELO's Mr. Blue Sky, of course, always a favorite of mine. ELO. But again, I don't know. It felt dark. It felt mean spirited. I know a lot of people have said that on YouTube, and people don't like to hear that. But it felt mean spirited. I mean, you get the pirates getting executed, and the guys that are executing them are like gleefully watching. We've got being child abused, basically. You got Ego, the living planet, trying to use his son as a means to an end, and then reveals that he killed his mother. It just feels very dark and mean-spirited, especially for a Guardians of the Galaxy film, where you expect this to be the most lighthearted of the Marvel movies. You expect this to give you a couple of laughs. There wasn't enough here for me to really appreciate. So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, number 6. All right. We're moving in here now to number 5, the top 5. Right, let's see, the top 5. Number 5, we have, not just superhero movies, so these are number 5, we have The Last Jedi. Yes, as I was saying, kinda difficult. I think my affinity for these characters probably is what puts this a bit higher on the list. But it still suffers a lot. Like I said, pretty much a letdown all around, all across the board. I don't wanna, like I said, review the film, but you have Luke acting out of character, comes to his big scene at the end, and he's just a hologram, basically. A lot of the side characters are sidelined too much in the movie. Chewbacca, 3PO and R2, even Leia, pretty much sidelined for times. I like the other characters, but they really didn't have too much to do. I mean, like I said, I hated the Finn and Rose subplot. That was a big waste of time. And to be honest with you, when you look at it, the Finn and Rose subplot all could have been avoided if they just didn't park on the beach. A less conspicuous place to park than on the beach. This thing, I don't know. I mean, I didn't mind the characters. I still like Finn and Rose and Poe, but I don't know. They just didn't give them a great storyline. Poe, for his part, he's a hotshot pilot that gets stuck in a ship trying to do a mutiny. That really wasn't what I was hoping to see from him. I wanted to see him on a mission. To be honest, I would have preferred to see Poe and Finn together on a mission. See, the problem is though that they got to give Finn a love interest because too many people want Finn with Ray, and too many people want Finn with Poe. So they had to give him an acceptable love interest, I think, because Finn can't be with Ray because the feminists, and personally because she's a Jedi, she shouldn't be with him. And Finn can't be with Poe because the world isn't ready for that yet. Hopefully, the world isn't ready for that yet. But so they gave him a love interest that they thought would work in this case. The Kylo Ren Rey stuff was probably the strongest stuff, but even there, disappointing because you had um, Kylo killing Snoke and basically taking up the mantle of the bad guy, pretty much leaving everybody in the lurch with Snoke, not knowing what the heck happened with him. Uh, Rey was not as overpowered as before. I thought she did significantly better in this film as a character, not being entirely. But again, mostly disappointing. This film, there's some good visuals. I like the characters, and I'm always gonna like the characters, even if they're mischaracterized. But still, not enough to put it any higher than number 5. So number 5, The Last Jedi. All right, number 4. Number 4, I just watched this movie again for the first time since the theater yesterday, and decidedly meh on it. Great film, but we have Spider-Man: Homecoming coming in at number 4. Uh, for the pluses, I really like Tom Holland as Spider-Man and as Peter Parker. He's very likable, and he isn't overbearing, in his nerdiness nor in his coolness. He's got the right balance. Loved Michael Keaton as the Vulture. He has a great presence. And in a sense, I kind of regret they didn't use him, Norman Osborn, because when you could see that scene in the car, that was a Norman Osborn scene. That was a scene that should have belonged to the Green Goblin. But they used it here and they wasted it here with the Vulture. Because basically what they did was they were harkening back to Spider-Man movies with that and trying to give that as a father that's basically the Green Goblin story. That's, his deadliest adversary. But the problem is they're doing that with the Vulture, and they're trying to like put some more Vulture, but at the same time, they're taking away any potential future of doing the Green Goblin, and they're like, "Oh, we don't want to do the Green Goblin again because the Green Goblin was done twice." But then again, you're using the same story beats for the Vulture. So what are you doing that's any different than if you would have just made it the Green Goblin and you would have set up a great, lead villain for the Spider-Man franchise going forward in the MCU? But they left it the Vulture. That's fine. They haven't used the Vulture, and that's fine. They wanted to use a new villain. Again, uh, I didn't like the Hot Aunt May. I didn't like the suit with the AI with a sexy voice. Jennifer Connelly, Karen, I guess was her name. He dubbed her. But I don't see Spider-Man having that kind of equipment. He's supposed to be the little guy, the underdog. He's supposed to be scrappy. That's what they didn't. Spider-Man's supposed to be scrappier than that. I didn't like Ned Leeds as the sidekick. They tried to do like a CW version of Spider-Man where he's quote unquote the guy in the chair that's going to give him all the information and help him out through his every waking moment, like they do in the CW shows, which is annoying for the most part. That the heroes nowadays need to have, as I always say, they need to have the bridge of the Starship Enterprise helping them out. Basically, in the old days, most superheroes had no one. If anything, they had one confidant. Spider-Man didn't even have that, but Batman had Alfred, or you might have had something like that. But you didn't have a whole team of people helping, and it feels pretty much like you know CW Spider-Man. That's what it felt like to me. And I didn't like the changes to the supporting cast. Ned Leeds is now Ganky, and Betty Brant looks like Gwen Stacy, and I don't know what they're setting up in the future. Maybe Ned Leeds and Betty Brant. I don't know. I had to say when I was watching it yesterday, if you notice, it looks like Peter Parker is the only Caucasian boy in that entire school. I mean, I don't think did Disney go a little too far with their trying to do a diversity and a representation, because I think Betty Brant was the only girl and Peter Parker was the only Caucasian boy. Seriously, I mean, I think there was maybe one kid that was on the school debate team or something there, and I don't know if he was Latino or whatever he was, but honestly, it's like they tried way too hard. I mean, come on. Peter Parker's supporting gallery of characters in the comics was all predominantly white. Of course, you had a few black characters such as Randy Robertson, Gloria Grant. It wasn't like there was a lack of diverse characters because from the beginning, pretty much Stan Lee, included diversity. But his core supporting cast of like Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane, uh, Harry Osborn, Flash Thompson, they're all white, and here they felt the need to change them just for the sake of changing them because oh diversity. We need to have diversity in every character outside of Peter Parker. And that, of course, leads to the big over uh, Zendaya playing Mary Jane. Of course, she's not playing Mary Jane; she's playing MJ, which is sort of a of getting out of it, saying, "Well, she's not Mary Jane; she's Michelle, but she's called MJ," which is a very familiar sounding moniker, isn't it? But fanboys can't complain because she's not Mary Jane, because someday the Marvel Universe will introduce Mary Jane as a redhead, green eyes, so we'll just hold out hope. Changed the character of Mary Jane, if that's indeed who Zendaya was supposed to be representing, by making her a very odd character to begin with. So I don't know. It looks like they're probably going to try to make her this series version of Mary Jane, but I don't see it. I don't think people are going to respond well to it. And I don't understand really why they have this fear with Spider-Man in Homecoming, where they couldn't talk about Uncle Ben's death. They couldn't show the spider bite in the flashback. They, didn't want to have any of the characters depicted, you know, like Flash as a jock and, Mary Jane or Harry or Gwen being introduced. They didn't want to do any of that stuff. They just want to make this as completely divorced from what has been seen in the movies thus far. And in doing so, you're really stripping away a lot of layers of Spider-Man. That's why, as I said, this feels like Spider-Man in a sitcom, Spider-Man in his world. I want to see Spider-Man in his world, and I was expecting that in a Kevin Feige Marvel Universe film, and I didn't get that. So that's what was disappointing to me about Spider-Man in the MCU, and it leads me to wonder if we'll have a decent Fantastic Four and or X-Men franchise in our universe. So yeah, Spider-Man: Homecoming again, somewhat lacking, not quite up to snuff. All right, so that is number 4 on our list of the 2017 greatest films. All right, coming in, we're going to do the top 3 now. This is the big ones. The top 3 are the good ones. I have to honestly say, I didn't think that 2017 was that great of a year for movies. Everyone was acting like, oh, such a great year for movies. But to be honest, these 3 films that are left are the only ones that I really give high marks to. The ones that we already just reviewed, they were all very forgettable and not very impressive. These 3 were impressive, though, and I have to say, they made the film-going experience worthwhile. 3, we have Wonder Woman. Yep, that's right, Wonder Woman. This was tough for me because I didn't know if Wonder Woman should be number 2. I think you people probably can guess what number 1 is because well, you'll know what number 1 is. But number 3, I'm gonna say Wonder Woman. It's one of the great origin movies, I think. Apart from them omitting the contest, which I was disappointed in, but the origin was told very well, and Gal Gadot was very, very spot on as Wonder Woman. The right naivety. She was her first time in, quote unquote man's world. And seeing her respond to that stuff and react to that stuff was very genuine. I thought she played that very well. Um, Also, Chris Pine was great here as Steve Trevor. I never felt for a moment that he was being overshadowed by Wonder Woman like he was in the TV show, which surprised me. I was surprised that he was represented as so well and really got his moments as well to shine in the film. Uh, the story the overall story was very good. Patty Jenkins, of course, directed the film and did a great job here with the World War I backdrop. Ares being the villain. A lot of people didn't like him. I thought he was good. Nothing to brag about, I suppose, but he was a serviceable villain, and I liked his sort of relationship with Wonder Woman, the way he was a hidden villain, so to speak, from her. Uh, Connie Nielsen, as I said before, just beautiful and just a great um, Hippolyta. Uh, you get to see all the trappings of the Amazons as well. Paradise Island, which of course was realized very well. I like that a lot. The other villains, Dr. Poison, the impact, from the little bits that we've seen of her, and we had Danny Houston's character. I can't remember his name right now, but Danny Houston's character, the general there. So they were serviceable villains. They were sort of like the Scarecrow to, well, if we're going to do a Batman Begins comparison. But then you can see the picture right there. Her costume was great. They got the costume great pretty much. Like I said, Gal Gadot, she kind of grew on me. Originally I was like, eh, but she really embodies that character. She gives that hope, that optimism that we want to see in Wonder Woman, that we wanted to see in Superman, heaven knows. That's why I said Patty Jenkins can direct a Superman sequel, as far as I'm concerned, because she got the way Wonder Woman's supposed to be portrayed. She's a very hopeful character, optimistic character. She brought out the best of her team. That's the thing. She found the deficiencies in each person and pretty much, you know, built them up, which is a very Wonder Woman thing to do. Third best movie of the year. I think the second movie is in pre-production now, and they're getting to work on that. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I don't know. They're saying the second movie 80s or something. I don't know about that, but I'll trust Patty Jenkins at this point. She did a good first movie. Let's hope that the second movie is also wonderful. All right, we're closing in now. Number two. This is the second best of my top seven list of the best movies of the year. And number two, we have Thor Ragnarok. Oh, yes, Thor Ragnarok and rolled my world, buddy. That's right. Uh, Again, I only seen this one once. I kind of want to go back and see it again, but it was a lot of fun from beginning to end. I mean, there was a couple of jokes didn't land, but most of it was funny, very funny, and it worked. The humor. Uh, of course, we got the Incredible Hulk, which is my favorite guy. Again, I don't want to review the whole movie, but they finally got the Hulk right. Basically, they gave the Hulk personality. He's not just a rage machine. He's not just there to Hulk smash and that's it. He had a personality, and seeing him interact with Thor was great. They have a great chemistry, really. Them two. Mark Ruffalo was good, of course, also as Bruce Banner, coming back from being in the limbo that is the Hulk for 2 years. Chris Hemsworth, I mean, the guy is just great. On for another Thor movie. I don't know if they're going to do Thor sequels after this one. I kind of think that they will, because the one thing I didn't like about this movie is the reinvention of Thor. And I don't think you reinvent Thor if you intend to just sideline him. And like I said before, I think Chris Hemsworth is the one of all the actors to want to come back and do more solo films. I think Chris Evans has been kind of on the fence, not wanting to do anymore. And then you have Robert Downey Jr., who for some reason they want to keep using him in team up fashion, but they don't want to pay him, I don't think, for the big Iron Man 4. I don't know why. I guess he's demanding too much of a salary. I don't know. You're making billions, Disney. Pay him. Pay the man. Pay the man, Lou. So, Thor Ragnarok, of course, you also had Kate Blanchett as Hela. She was great. Um, could have done more with Scourge. I would like to see a little more from him. He kind of went noble on us, and there's no real way, I guess, to see him. But that was also a bit disappointing. Um, Jeff Goldblum, of course, was a lot of fun. Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie was, passable. It was all right. Uh, yeah, a lot of good action, great action too. A lot of great action. Like I said, I didn't really like too much the reinvention of Thor. I didn't like the fact that he doesn't have the hammer anymore. That he doesn't have um, that he has the eye patch, and that he has the lightning powers without the hammer. I don't know. That feels like a reinvention that just takes the character in a different direction that I really don't like. But it doesn't change. It doesn't change the nature of his character. He still acts the same, but I don't understand why the trappings had to change so much. He doesn't have the long blonde hair. You know what I mean? It's like we basically have a new Thor that acts the same but looks totally different, because new and improved Thor, because nobody responded well to the other Thor movies, which they were great, by the way, but we won't get into that. Particularly the first one. But oh, of course, and how can I move on without mentioning Loki? Loki, of course. Tom Hiddleston was always fun in that role, and as I said in my review originally, I kind of feel that they've said all they have to say with Loki at this point. They don't want to really turn him into a good guy. I don't want to see him become a good guy. But this frenemy business is sort of, at this point, played out. I don't really know what they can do anymore with him in the Infinity War without just turning him all out evil. And I think that's what they're expected to do. But of course, we also have the possibility that he'll turn noble in the end and probably go out fighting alongside Thor. I don't know. Either way it turns, I think decision. I think it's too good to not have him stay evil though, but then they're probably gonna kill him off if they do. I don't know. One way or another, it was a lot of fun. Thor Ragnarok, number 2 on my list. And so, what is number 1, pray tell? Ah, yes, we did them all, right? I mean, who's possibly missing in this uh, countdown, on this list? I mean, I don't know. But oh, that's right. There's nobody, but nobody has this number 1 on their list except me. I've got Justice League number 1, my favorite movie of 2017. Joss Whedon has to be credited, of course, with this because he pretty much pried some joy and life into the dourness of the Zack Snyder trilogy, injecting it with enough fun to make this a worthwhile movie and make it something that I enjoyed seeing. Because, I absolutely hated Man of Steel. And I wasn't at all crazy about Batman v Superman. Like I said, they felt like they actually took a look at a comic book, took a look at what was going on with the superheroes. Oh, wait a second. Oh, sorry, I didn't know this. I haven't been looking at the comments in the chat room, so I want to welcome Mr. White Gloves. Nice to see you again here on. Didn't get a chance to look at the uh, chat room, but check out Splash Page Comics if you want to check out Mr. White Gloves show because he's got a great channel there on YouTube. But yeah, so yeah, Justice League is my favorite. Mr. Whiteglove says that was the drawback for me, just not Thor without Hammer. That's right. That was kind of the thing that bothered me about it. Is sort of the reinvention of Thor. You really don't get the way that he's always depicted in the comics. It's like now he's a different character all on his own. But yeah, well, moving on now to Justice League. Justice League, like I said, it pretty much paid off on sort of the Justice League cartoon, the stuff that I grew up with. Well, I was a little bit older. I won't say grow up with, but but the Justice League comics, it finally felt like I was seeing that on the big screen. Now it's not quite the same as Avengers. Avengers, they had a game plan, and as I said before, this film was sort of cobbled together. This film was pried out of what Zack Snyder was trying to do, and then he had to leave the project, and then Joss Whedon came in and retooled it. So, of course, it's not quite a masterpiece, but the kind of life that I wanted to see. I finally saw Superman the way I wanted to see him. I haven't seen Superman the way I wanted to see him since. Nothing wrong with that. I'm a Marvel fanboy after all. Mr. Whiteglove says, yes, that's right. I my first love probably in comics was the Christopher Reeve Superman films. And I have to say, I don't think I saw that kind of Superman in film since, arguably Superman 4. I mean, Superman 4 isn't a masterpiece, of course, but that was probably the last time I saw Superman depicted the way I wanted to see Superman depicted. And I didn't blame Henry Cavill for this. I think he's a fine enough actor to play Superman, but for some reason, Zack Snyder couldn't really get that heroic trait in Superman. And seeing him come back like this, I felt the weight of it. I felt that the weight of bringing back Superman, it felt like it had the kind of gravitas that I was looking for. That Superman isn't just, some mopey guy that where, people seem to feel like he's overpowered and what are we going to do with Superman? He's a Boy Scout. But that sort of thing, it's like Captain America. If you play to that, it's actually very successful because he's a very unique character. He doesn't have the kind of drawbacks of the other characters having a dark side. There's not really a dark side to Superman. And I don't really blame Brandon Routh either. He was just playing was written for him in Superman Returns. So I kind of felt that maybe, you know, had they had a better story, maybe Brandon Routh could have played a good Superman because he just had that god awful script by Brian Singer. Because like the same thing that they did with the Force Awakens, where they took basically the original Superman movie, and they remade it to Superman Returns. I would like to do a review about Superman Returns eventually, but uh, like I said, I've had technical difficulties lately. Mr. Whiteglove says Cyborg should have been replaced by Green Lantern. Yeah, I could see that. They wanted to distance themselves from the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds, which I didn't hate. I mean, I think they could have made a better sequel to that movie. I was saying that on Twitter not too long ago too, that the villains is what really brought down the Green Lantern movie. I mean, Hector Hammond and Parallax were garbage. If they would have had Mark Strong as Sinestro, that would have been a much better movie. But as it is, they could have just did a sequel with Mark Strong as Sinestro and made it a better movie, and they probably could have folded that Green Lantern into this movie, I think. But since they had to start from scratch with Green Lantern, they, you know, diversity into the film, so they had to find, a black superhero. I would prefer Green Lantern. A lot of people say maybe Martian Manhunter should have got the cyborg role, but I will admit I actually liked Cyborg in this film. I didn't have a problem with him. I think that they actually made him a compelling character. Because a lot of people were saying, well, Cyborg is supposed to be a lot more humorous. He's a bit more boisterous of a character than, and we already had The Flash was the humorous one, and we had Aquaman was the boisterous one. So I think he kind of did fill a need in the film where he was like the serious one that was sort of coming to grips with what he'd become, because this is still early in the days of Cyborg. You have to remember, he's not going to be like with a great sense of humor after just being rebuilt and being like maybe 30% man still. You gotta give him some time to adapt. But yeah, I liked Cyborg. I thought he was great. The Flash was, a little bit maybe overboard with the humor and a little bit overboard with the him being so green. He wasn't quite experienced. But like I said, going back to the Justice League cartoon where he was played sort of more humorously, I could see that. I could see that seeing a more humorous Flash in this. Again, it sort of fills the role of the humorous one, like he did in the Justice League Unlimited animated series. And I thought Aquaman was fine. I like Jason Momoa, stress Aquaman. He had a lot of gusto. You know, you know, maybe he's not. And I'll be honest and admit that I haven't read a lot of Aquaman comics. I just know mostly him from, the golden age of comics, where he's with the short blonde hair and the orange shirt. This is a little bit of a different take on that. This is the more recent sort of warrior king Aquaman. I'm not as familiar with that, but it seemed fine to me. I liked him. And we have Ben Affleck's Batman, who was fun. I mean, they pretty much backed off of the killing, which is what bothered me most about Batman v Superman. The Batman killing, which I thought was wrong. Of course, he still, takes out a bunch of parademons here, but it just felt more in line with maybe sort of an apocalyptic situation. That's what Batman finds himself in. He might use a gun against those huge tick creatures there known as the parademons. Again, I didn't like that too much, but it was at least understandable. I liked the dynamic between Bruce Wayne and Diana. I thought that was pretty good. They didn't kind of push it into a romance, but then again, it still felt like there was an affinity between them that sort of worked for me. I know they did that a little bit in the Justice League animated series too, where there was sort of a romantic spark there a little bit. I didn't really want to see a romance between them, but I mean, I think they kind of used that to their advantage. Um, Also, Wonder Woman, yeah, Wonder Woman as a character, I thought that was a good progression of her from her solo film to this film. I thought because they had to bridge sort of her coming to man's world and now being active again, because after the events of her solo movie, it was sort of she had sort of given up on man's world and comes back only when uh what's his name? Doomsday becomes a threat. They kind of bridged that pretty well, I thought. I think, like I said, the Wonder Woman sequel is supposed to take place in the '80s, so I don't know how they're going to explain that very well. But so yeah, overall, I love the Justice League. I thought it was a great movie. I mean, yeah, there was some shortcomings that'll probably be, you know, if they do a sequel, which is big if now because a lot of people are saying it underperformed and it wasn't on the WB's list of upcoming projects. If they do it, they have a good starting point because the end of the film was great with the Deathstroke tease and Legion of Doom tease. I think, of course, if they could get Jesse Eisenberg to dial back his Lex Luthor a little bit, he could even work too. I mean, I think it depends on the performance of the director. If they could get a good performance out of him, I wouldn't be against seeing Eisenberg back as Luthor. He wasn't effective in Batman v Superman, but if they dial it back, he could probably be an effective Luthor. And the Justice League 2 would be great, seeing Justice League versus Legion of Doom. Have a long ways to go before we get there. Aquaman is coming out next year about this time. We'll have Black Manta introduced, who I'm sure will be in the Legion of Doom. Probably other films will be out by then. The Flash and Flashpoint Paradox, which will probably introduce Reverse Flash. So I mean, these villains will probably start trickling their way into the DC universe, and that's what, for a Justice League sequel. All right, so all right, yeah, Mr. Whiteglove says I think Lex has been overused in the Superman films. Yeah, I can see that. The thing is, though, I think that when you're doing a new series like this, I think you should use the original characters. It's something I was talking about a little earlier on when I was talking about Spider-Man Homecoming, and I was saying even though the Green Goblin has been used twice, I think they could still use him again because when you're having a new uh they're starting over again, I don't think you want to avoid the arch villain of the I think you use him like in a smaller capacity, like I said, could be done in Justice League 2, where he's like the spearhead of the group, the organization, the Legion of Doom, but focus more on maybe some of the heavy hitters like Deathstroke or, you know, Brainiac is probably the next go-to guy. Excuse me. But personally, I never liked Brainiac. That's why I don't care if he shows up in a movie. I was never fond of him. I don't know why. But yeah, because Superman doesn't have the greatest most notable rogues gallery. Superman should just fly him to another planet and just get him out of the way. That would be funny. That would be worth seeing. Seeing him stranded there. Stranding him in the Fortress of Solitude would be another way. But anyway, as you can tell, I'm losing my voice. So I'm still battling this cold that I've had since, I think, the first week of November. If I talk too long, I'm going to end up losing it. So I want to thank Mr. White Gloves for joining us. Thank you. And please check out Splash Page Comics. He's got a great channel there. I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas once again and a very Happy New Year 2018 coming up. And we've got a lot of great movies coming up next year that I can't wait to see. We got Black Panther will be the first. Of course, Infinity War, Aquaman. We've got Venom, which may or may not be. And yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a great time. Like Mr. Wycliffe says, new season in January. Cool videos. All right. Thank you for joining me once again. And as always, this is Johnny Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly. And I'll be with you again real soon.